share these experiences and to learn from each other. I think it's a well-known fact that people learn much better from experience than from theory. And I think that's part of the approach here is that we learn from each other through practice and sharing these experiences. So we're very, very grateful to Ricky and the team for hosting us this morning. Thank you very much. We know it's often a logistical nightmare to get these things together, and we really appreciate it. Those of you who are members of the EPA also know that, or may be aware that in October we will have another one of these breakfast sessions at MTN, where Johanna and her team will share similar experiences from an MTN perspective. And we really encourage you to join us there so that we can all learn. So where are we with the EPA? As I said, we're almost a year old. A lot of things has happened in the background. Some of you who are members may not have seen a lot happen, but it's almost like painting a wall. 80% of the preparation goes in preparing the wall, and only the last bit in actually doing the cosmetic stuff, So a lot of time went into developing the website, furthering the functionality of the website. So a lot of money went into that. Also spent a lot of time putting codes together over product, over edits. And then, I don't know if it's surprising or not, but a lot of time went into spending time with souls. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but you know, we're a non-profit company, so for us to get paid by our members, especially the corporate members, we need to have a tax clearance certificate. And that sounds easy. Try and get a tax clearance certificate when you're a non-profit company, just started, and you know, you don't have any profit-driven operations. So eventually we got that right. I think towards the end of last week, I think we finally got our tax clearance certificate. So that's sorted out. Just to put our membership, currently our membership with a very gracious corporate membership from MTN, we are around 80. After they've joined us, we're about 80 members, more or less, which I think is significant and extraordinary given the fact that we're not even a year old. To put it into context, I spoke to Leon van Vuren the other day, and he said that it took the Ethics Institute years just to get to 200 members, which is quite extraordinary if you see where we are. And we believe that we can make another 50 members when we put our minds to it. So I think we've done well in that respect. We've got enough members. On that point, I must just note though that the intention for the EPA, at least the board at this stage, is not to have a big operation like the ACFE or the Compliance Institute. I don't believe that there's enough ethics practitioners in South Africa to warrant those kind of figures. We believe that the quantity of what the EPA provides for the practitioners and its members is much more important than having thousands and thousands of members. So that is more or less the aim for the EPA, is to focus, to rather focus on quantity, to focus on the quality of our membership and what we actually do for our members. We believe we are relatively financially strong. We've got very little overheads in terms of our operations. I guess it's banking charges, paying AfriHost for our website hosting, and a few small overheads. So we're financially strong, and I don't believe there's any issues around finances to be worried about. We're proud to say that our board is quite diverse in terms of representation of industries, private, public sector, and quite diverse in terms of telecoms, financial services, banking. But it can always be better. And for that specific purpose, we've gone on a drive to recruit another 2 board members. So those of you who believe that qualify and that you can add value to the board, please send us your CV and your application or your interest, and then we will take it from there. We currently have 2 vacancies, and we've got a few CVs that we're going to consider. We've got a board meeting after this event where we will consider it, but please, if you feel that you can add value, please add your name to the list. Shane has been doing quite a bit of work around the codes of conduct, code of ethics, and some ideas around our policies, so you will see that before the end of the year we will have all of that in place. I guess, a sad indictment to have for the Ethics Practitioners Association, a code of ethics. We would like to believe that being ethics practitioners and ethics officers, that something like that would not be necessary. But I guess from a governance perspective, that is indeed something to look at. Megan is helping us with a process of getting the organisation SACWA approved. And I think that's a very important strategic initiative for us. I think at the end of the day, that is why we're all members of the EPA, is that the EPA would be the professional association for ethics practitioners. That ultimately is going to be very beneficial for us as ethics practitioners, because at the end of the day, we will be deemed professionals in our own right, not ex-compliance officers, ex-accountants, ex-whatever, that we will be deemed as a profession in itself and be recognized as such by SACWA. The SACWA process has changed a little bit, I understand, the process of application. So my understanding is, Megan, and keep me honest, that you've got a meeting, you and Shane got a meeting with them in October? Briefing.
In August.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start the process. We believe that it should not be a major issue for us. I think because we start with a blank slate, we have no institutional memory or anything like that, it should be a relatively easy process for us. I spoke to Dion Rousseau the other day, and I think it's clear that our relationship, the EPA relationship, is going to be very close to the Ethics Institute of South Africa. Unfortunately, there's still a little bit of confusion between what the EPA does and what the Ethics Institute does, but I think both of us agree the way forward that we will put extra effort into making clear what the Ethics Institute does and what the EPA does, and that we're actually complementary, that we're not in competition at all whatsoever, that we're actually complementary, and given our relationship with them, we believe that we're going to be much closer to them, work much closer going forward. Also, Shane has spent a bit of time on working out a model of our membership levels. We've got more or less an idea of what we want to do. We'll share with the board a little bit later, and then you will share that with our members. We believe that the membership structure is an ideal structure to recognize people for previous experience and qualifications, and as you move up through the levels, we'll recognize the experience and the input that you provide into the network of ethics practitioners. So in light of the purpose of the EPA empowering ethics professionals, I believe this morning would be the first and one of many to come, where we try and empower and make our ethics practitioners more knowledgeable on the subject, particularly the practical parts of being an ethics practitioner. And as I said earlier in my note, that it is all about creating the networking opportunities for us. So what we're going to have today is Tricky is going to share with us some of the practical examples and some of the views that they have from a Nedbank perspective, and I think that's very important given the fact that they're such a major player in South Africa and is a leading player in terms of ethics. I mean, Tricky, if I'm not mistaken, your ethics office is one of the earliest that started the formation of an independent ethics office, so we're happy to learn from you. So without further ado, I'm going to leave it over to you, and then you're going to share with us some of your ideas and experiences. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's so nice to see all the usual corporates here. And it's so nice that we're such a close-knit community. And I was just telling somebody earlier that I attended one of Cynthia's sessions the last month, and I again realized how little I know. Every day is an opportunity for learning. And a couple of the people who are sitting here, who are our business ethics officers in the back, like Werner, Colette, Johan, Rachel there at the back, hi Bobby, nice seeing you again, Fani here, and they are all the people who's part of a project where we reviewed our code of ethics and conduct. We combined the two, and we made quite a big document out of it. And more than 70 people in the group from their perspective views gave input into this document, and it was a huge process. It took us more than a year to review the code, and I'm sad to say that it is already outdated. Because with the fast pace of change, you know, you can never keep up to date with everything that's happening. And Colette has an executive, her name is Fiona Watson, and this lady keeps me on my toes.
Not just you.
So, and you know, especially with the fast pace of change, and in terms of thinking differently, and bringing in design thinking and agile thinking and those type of things, and how the world of work is changing, and how codes should adapt to that change. You know, it's mind-blowing stuff, and it feels to me like every day we are doing groundbreaking things, because everything is changing. Our code has just been approved now a week and a half ago by board, and I've already set up the next review sessions. Okay, and that is in order to keep up with things as they happen, and especially in the financial services, and Stefan, you and Shane, you know, and all our business ethics officers, that you know, we are focusing these days more and more on going digital, and on design thinking, and on agile, and what we call the new ways of work, getting smaller teams together, getting them out of the business, completing a project, moving back into their jobs again, employing people for short-term contracts, and the values and the rules of values are actually changing. Especially if you think of something like outside interests and conflicts of interest. Those rules are changing. We can't apply to our current workforce what we applied 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, because the workforce is basically changing on a 3-year cycle totally. And not the face of it, but the people as well. And taking into consideration our millennials, and that they form about 60% of the workforce in South Africa, these are people that you need to manage a little bit differently, because they add so much value, and now people bring innovation and entrepreneurship to the table. And it's them that we should focus on as well, and get them to do the right thing, because they are the leaders of the future. They are actually already the leaders. So this is just one of my favorite definitions. I think it will always stay one of my favorite definitions, because I have such a passion for ethical leadership and for ethics being driven from the top. Because if you don't have ethical leadership, then nothing else in your company can succeed. So power does not change who you are, it just reveals who you are. And I think in a lot of instances and scandals over the last couple of years, we can see how people who were in very, very senior positions and always had the utmost respect of industry, how they faltered, and how they also had clay of feet of clay. Now, so it's those type of things that we must take into consideration. I quickly want to take you through our code of conduct. Just show you what we did, taking into consideration that it's outdated already. And tell you how we got to it. We previously had a code of ethics as well as a code of conduct. Now, the code of ethics was basically your principle-based document. Set out the principles, who your stakeholders are, and everything, and then you'll get your code of conduct, where we put down the guidelines for, or the rules for behavior in the group. And we found that at a stage in time it was creating a little bit of too much confusion, and we had to combine it. And we combined it in a way that it made better sense. And you know, at the end of the day, when you look at it and how different it looks to what we had before, you know, you are actually amazed. And you're amazed at the ideas that you get from the people if you just ask them. So you know what, if you review that code of ethics of yours, please, you know, distribute it as widely as possible and get input from people. Because I can tell you, I have input in that code from each and every business ethics officer that sits in this room. It has been included. Because they bring to the party a very nice different view of how things should be. first just going to go out of this. I'm just going to show you. And you know what, we always share anyway. So let me just see. So if you want a copy of it, it's going up on my website anyway. Just see that. So how we started off with this, we had a look at what was available in the market, and we looked at the business ethics network, Africa, Ben Africa, the Ethics Institute guidelines, and a whole lot of books. I used Cynthia's book quite extensively, and any one of you out there wants to set up an ethics function, Cynthia's book, Ethics Scan, that is an absolute brilliant book, and I don't get paid royalties, yeah? So I just wanted to let you know it's really a very useful book to have when you do these type of things. So we had a look at that. We made use of our best friend Google quite a lot, and there is a company that's called Ethisphere. Now every year they choose the most ethical 100 companies in the world. And what we did was we went and we worked through the codes of conduct of those 100 companies last year. And we worked through those code of conducts, and we aligned our code of conduct to what we could find was the best practice. And what we also did is we got some input from our forensic services team. Those guys know, they can identify a gap like you can't believe. So if you're not making use of your forensics guys, then you're already losing out. You must absolutely make use of them. So they gave a lot of input. And then business themselves and HR in business gave a lot of input, because those are the people who ultimately deal with the issues. And they know what works and what doesn't work. And that also brought along an interesting dilemma, because what we find in our client-facing area and what we find in our head office area are two totally different things. It's basically two different ways of managing people. So this is something that Fiona and I have debated hotly and extensively over the last couple of months. How do you get a code in place that really speaks to all employees, especially in a corporate this size? And we have now just more than 30,000 employees in about 9 countries. And that also brings in a nice dynamic. If you want a challenge, you know, taking into consideration your subsidiary legislation and their culture and what you do within those areas, things get really interesting. So what we do is now we have a booklet, and it's in 4 different chapters. So first of all, we have the Nedbank Group and our view on ethical conduct. You know, to basically inform our employees, this is why it's important, guys. This is why we are doing it. So we just speak a little bit about the structure of the code, what our chief executive says about it, the conduct philosophy. Why do we buy into ethics? Why is it so important? And it's about sustainability. You know, if you don't have a foundation of ethics in your company, you can't have a sustainable company. You are going to go wrong somewhere along the line. We bring ethics back to our group strategy and our values. And then we focus a little bit on international standards, things like the UK Bribery Act, the United Nations Global Compact, things like that would inform the code. Also, very importantly, the King 4, the Code of Corporate Governance. And there are some really interesting things in King 4. If you haven't read it yet, please go and have a read. Because especially in terms of remuneration, performance management and recognition, there are certain ethical aspects that needs to be managed from an ethics office point of view. So please go and have a look at those aspects if you haven't yet, and if you want to, I will send you some information about that. So naturally, ethical leadership, it starts at board level. So we included our board ethics statement. Our group executive also has an ethics statement, and they have to recommit to this ethics statement. It's like a pledge at executive and board level. And they are also measured on this pledge in the board evaluations on an annual basis. So the board members will rate each other anonymously based on those principles contained in the board ethics statement and the group ethics statements. So leading with integrity, and that's where we focus on leadership again. You will see there's this very strong focus on leadership. Because without that example, you do not have a culture. If you don't get that example at the top, then don't even attempt to put an ethics office in place. So who's covered by the code? And this is an interesting one. It may seem easy, but if you look at your supply chain, and you have people like payroll contractors in your service, but you also have suppliers who are actually contractors who work on your premises. You know, sometimes we have contractors who's been here for 8 to 10 years on our premises, and those people need to be treated differently than a normal supplier. So, you know, it's just putting into context who the code applies to and who does the supplier code of conduct applies to. Okay, so the next thing is just our conduct pledge. It's basically our whole code of conduct that's summarized in 14 principles. And if you live those principles, then you can't go wrong. Then you basically live the code. So it's a nice thing to have as well, to put up in a poster format somewhere, although we are totally moving away from anything that's paper. Digital is the in thing, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. And then there's a test for ethical conduct. The next important thing is, who's your stakeholders? Because that's very important, and if you have read King 4, then you will see that stakeholder engagement, I think, with ethics, I think, is probably 2 of the most important chapters in King 4. Because without your stakeholders, you do not have a business. And in that chapter, it describes exactly how the relationship must be with your stakeholders, and that's very, very important. So just the different stakeholders, employees, clients, suppliers, intermediaries. We talk about fair and reasonable market conduct, and Shane, you and Stefan will know about that. Market conduct is very big at the moment. Market conduct and conduct risk. Our shareholders, responsible investing. That's an ethical consideration. Where do we invest our capital? And in which funds, in which projects? And are those projects ethical in nature? Do we take into account human rights principles when we invest? All those type of things. And all the insurance people here would know exactly what we are referring to. Then respecting the society in which we operate, respecting our competitors, the environment, and how we deal with governments, regulators, and supervisors. Again, just a little bit of a different focus on clients, suppliers, and intermediaries in terms of our supplier code of conduct. We look at competition law, as well as the anti-money laundering, combating and financing of terrorist and related activities, and sanctions risk management control. For banks and any financial services organization, those are of utmost importance. You must manage your risk in those areas very, very well. Chapter C is probably the most important chapter for the general folk in the company, because these are the trends where risk occur. This is conduct risk. Chapter C is conduct risk. Okay. So, what types of conduct risk do we have? There's harassment and discrimination, drug and alcohol abuse, physical security, threatening behavior, occupational health and safety, smoking. We have an interesting one, this one, lending, borrowing, giving colleagues money. It's a huge problem if you work in a bank, believe me. And I always want to make the bank's problem if the person doesn't want to pay their money back. Okay. And something interesting there as well with stokvels. And I don't know if you know this, but a stokvel sounds so innocent, and you must be very careful if you lend money from a stokvel, because you actually need a banking license for that. You know, and it's all those nice dynamics that makes this field very interesting. Intellectual property and studying, and this is something where I think one of the major changes is going to happen going forward in future with the change in workforce. Because we are going to have more and more people who have their own businesses, they have their own brand, they will be working for 5 or 6 different companies at the same time, doing the same thing. There's going to be a huge challenge with who does that intellectual property actually belongs to. Okay. Electronic communication training and acknowledgements. This is just to get people to be aware that they must acknowledge these things and read it when it comes along. Something that we have been battling as well is inappropriate personal relationships, not only between staff members, but between staff members and stakeholders, suppliers, and how employees don't realize the conflicts of interest that create. Dress code. You would think that that shouldn't be important in this day and age, but I promise you, dress code and harassment goes hand in hand, especially sexual harassment. And you all know that there's been a huge drive in the world on sexual harassment. You know, the hashtag #MeToo campaign, and we have to report about sexual harassment at board level. So it's become very, very important how we manage that. Political donations and sponsorships, I think that speaks for itself. Gossiping, rumor mongering, and gossiping and rumors, we see as 2 different things because we have a rumor policy as well. And the rumor policy is what we say about our competitors and how we don't talk negatively about our competitors, you know, and especially in our industry. You know, what is one bank scandal today is our scandal tomorrow. So be careful what you say about your competitors. Be careful what you say about any of your stakeholders. Social media. I can't tell you how important that's become. Most of our investigations these days, from an ethics point of view, from a conduct point of view, focus in some other way around social media and the abuse of social media. And it doesn't matter how much awareness you create about the use of social media. I think people will be human and they are going to keep on making these mistakes. Personal account and insider trading as well for a bank, very, very important. Cell phone usage during work hours. This is one of those nice dilemmas as well, because we are now going into the digital age and we encourage our employees to be tech savvy. But we also don't want them to use that tech too much for their own purposes during work hours. You know, so it's that dilemma between the two, and how do you create a balance? Personal financial management, I think in any financial services industry, this is very, very important, because if you can't manage your own finances, you know, how can you manage somebody else's, especially from a bank point of view? So we place a lot of emphasis on it. We give our staff a lot of training on this so that they can be in a better space. As soon as we find out that they're in trouble, we try to assist, coaching, and all sorts of stuff. Personal use of company resources goes with conflicts of interest, stakeholder engagement, and that employees must know that only certain people are allowed to talk to certain stakeholders, especially your regulators. Because if you have all your admin clerks or your junior people suddenly starting to talk to your regulators, you know, you're going to start having a problem. So there needs to be a focused area that looks after stakeholder engagement. And people need to know what all the other parties in the company are saying to that same stakeholder, so that you don't go and say something that's contrary to that. So stakeholder engagement, like I said, according to King 4, very, very important. Facilitation payments. And we actually allow 2 types of facilitation payments when our employees go into African countries. And you will understand why I say we allow those. It is where a facilitation payment needs to be paid in order to secure a staff member's security. It will be allowed, or where there is a medical emergency. So in those instances, you have to come back and you have to explain why you did it. And those 2 things we will not consider a bribe as such, although the UK Bribery Act will probably not agree with us. But you know what? when you look at all the legislation and the codes and things, there is a measure of reasonableness that you must have on how to practically implement these things. Because if you implement to the letter of the law, then you're not going to be able to run a business. You know, it's just one of those things. You have to, it's almost like King says, you know, apply and explain. You know, so yeah, we follow that rule as well. Then declaration of secrecy and privacy requirements, which is also financial services, which is of most importance these days. How we protect our stakeholders and our employees' information. Removal of documents from company premises. This is becoming more prevalent as well. We have seen in the last 2 years how data has leaked, and you know, that needs to be managed in some or other way. Preventing financial crime. This is more our group risk area and our forensic services and our financial and crime management area, but we link back to it because an ethical foundation underpins it all. Then avoiding conflicts of interest, relationships with business partners, gifts and entertainment. If you have the UK Bribery Act that you have to comply with, if you operate in England or Britain or wherever, I promise you this is a problem. And the UK Bribery Act is much more strict than South African legislation. And you need to take this into consideration, which I think is actually a good thing, because it seriously tries to prevent corruption, bribery and corruption. Loyalty schemes, this is just to help our own staff to know when they are allowed to receive any benefits from the loyalty schemes that the company runs. Recording of meetings, this was a very interesting one. Although it's not illegal to record a meeting between 2 persons and the one person doesn't know about it, the bank has decided that it's unethical. If you want to record a meeting, you will inform everybody in the room in that meeting that you are recording the meeting. So we consider it unethical if you don't. And then just a referral to entrapment, and if there's any initiatives that we are busy with the police or whichever, the Hawks or whoever, who is it the Hawks these days?
Yeah.
Haven't changed yet. If we are involved in any initiative where they want to entrap somebody, it must be actually signed off by our Chief Executive Officer. We must know that. And then the 4th chapter, we focus on our ethics office and what we do. What do we do? What don't we do? We talk a little bit about non-retaliation, and on the next slide that I'm going to talk to you about quickly about just future trends to get the conversation going. It's the role of whistleblowers and how the role of whistleblowers has increased and become more important the last 10 to 20